Bottles and rap go together like beats and bars. It has always been part of the culture, and nobody blinks at it anymore.
I feel like 90% of musicians is on that.
But while most artists just sip for the camera, some of them actually need the bottle to function, and they will do anything to make sure you do not find out.
I didn't want to tip because I felt like, damn, they're gonna be like, oh, his music changed because he ain't drinking lean no more.
From the outside, it looks like a lifestyle. Just another rapper living large, popping bottles at the after party. But once you start digging deeper, the things they let slip in interviews, they thought nobody was really listening to. You realize some of these cases are a lot darker than what is being shown publicly.
Because I sip and smoke every day, and it's not a native situation.
And you better stay till the end, because a few names on this list are one bad night away from making the news for all the wrong reasons. The Game. Let's start with the one that just happened in front of everybody and barely registered as alarming, which says everything about how normalized this has become. The Game stood on the Versus stage against YG at the Compton Forever event, grabbed a full bottle of Don Julio Reposado, and drank almost the entire thing in one continuous pull. The clips went everywhere, and the reaction underneath them was not wild flick. It was genuine concern from people who have watched this man for 20 years. Here's the thing about The Game though, that Don Julio moment was not the first time, or the 5th time, or the 10th time. This is a pattern that goes back almost 2 decades. Back in 2008, at a concert in Nairobi, The Game downed 2 full bottles of alcohol on stage in front of the crowd, leaving people genuinely unsure whether to cheer or wait for him to collapse. He then kept rapping for another half hour, and in January 2014, at a concert in London, a clip surfaced of him drinking an entire bottle on stage and passing out. The Versus moment did not come out of nowhere. The man has been doing this in public for a very long time. The crowd thought it was entertainment. He posted about it himself like it was a highlight. That is the part that should concern people more than anything else. He has been drinking like this in public long enough that he treats it as part of the show. Game does not apologize for any of it. He does not downplay it or claim he was putting on a performance. He posts about it, talks about it, brags about it. That is a person who has no internal alarm going off anymore when the behavior escalates. Then there is the F and Vodka partnership. During that deal, his Instagram was a near daily stream of drinking content, not clean stage promotional posts, live proof of consumption. He would go on IG Live visibly drunk, run his mouth about everything from beef to personal business, and wake up the next day like it did not happen. When the partnership ended, the drinking content did not slow down. It just lost the brand watermark. The other detail that does not get enough attention is the Compton Forever fan vote result. Game lost to YG by a wide margin. He had the catalog, he had the crowd, but he also spent a significant portion of his stage time either drinking, talking about drinking, or recovering from it. When your performance reads as impaired even to a crowd that loves you, that is information. One thing I can say is a man who chugs a full bottle of Don Julio on a live stream in front of millions, loses the fan vote by a wide margin, and walks off stage without any visible acknowledgement that something might be wrong, is either very confident or very deep into it. Looking at the pattern across the last 6 years, the evidence points one way. And now that the Versus clip is everywhere and people are watching it back to back with the Nairobi footage, the question is whether this becomes the moment that forces a real conversation or just another highlight that the culture files away and forgets in 2 weeks. Lil Wayne. Wayne's case is the most documented on this list, and it keeps updating because he keeps running the same cycle. Wayne has been publicly linked to lean since at least 2008, when he started glorifying it in interviews and making the styrofoam double cup part of his whole visual identity. In 2013, it nearly killed him.
Rapper Lil Wayne was rushed to the hospital after he was found unconscious in Chicago. Reports say he suffered multiple seizures in a hotel room yesterday.
In an interview with Katie Couric that same year, Wayne looked her in the eye and said he had quit.
And what made you stop?
The doctor did.
Really?
I was doing it too much. And, the doctor kind of told me, we can't tell you what to do, but I suggest that your mom tell you to stop.
He acknowledged that codeine was in his pain pills, even after he stopped the lean itself, and that reducing the dose caused a withdrawal reaction his body could not handle. He said he was working on it, and for a minute, it genuinely seemed like he meant it. Then in June 2016, TMZ caught him double cupping in Milwaukee, right before another round of seizures put him back in a hospital. His private jet had to make emergency landings twice in 2 days. He blamed epilepsy. His team blamed his schedule. Witnesses told TMZ he had consumed an extraordinary amount of lean in the hours leading up to those seizures. In 2017, TMZ published a photo series from February through August showing Wayne consistently rocking the double cup at shows, backstage, and social settings, all while he was supposedly done with lean. That September, he was hospitalized again after multiple seizures canceled the Las Vegas show. Here is the pattern. Wayne makes a public commitment to sobriety. Something happens that proves he is still using. He leans into the epilepsy diagnosis as the explanation, and the cycle resets. Every single time he ended up in a hospital, his team or Wayne himself offered an alternative explanation. The lean connection was always in the evidence. and always explained away in the statement. That is not a coincidence. That is a machine built to protect the brand at the cost of addressing the actual problem. The cut was not just a habit, it was his creative identity. He had merged them so completely that getting sober felt like a threat to his output. You do not think that way about something you can take or leave. The Carter 6 finally dropped in June 2025 after years of delays, promises, and false starts. Wayne had been promising that album for so long it had become a running joke in hip-hop circles. The question that nobody in the press asked directly when it finally landed was what those lost years actually looked like behind closed doors. What was in the cup during those sessions? Whether the music that came out on the other side reflects the real version of him or the version he managed to hold together long enough to deliver. Meek Mill. Meek Mill openly told on himself in an interview, and the culture barely noticed because it was buried inside an album promo conversation, not a confessional. In October 2023, Meek and Rick Ross sat down with Ebro Darden on Apple Music's Rap Life Radio to talk about their joint album, Too Good to Be True. Somewhere in the middle of that conversation, Meek went somewhere nobody expected.
Yeah, I was drinking liquor every day when I came
He
home.
noticed his shoulders.
My stomach was bent over for like a year and a half. I came home 2019. I couldn't smoke weed or really drink liquor like that.
This is a man describing daily alcohol consumption that physically damaged his digestive system over an extended period of time, telling you about it in an interview, and framing it as something that just happened to him. That is what functional addiction looks like at a high profile level. You swap one substance for another because the second one feels safer, more socially acceptable, more aligned with the lifestyle. Then you are a year into drinking every day on tour, your stomach destroyed, and you realize too late that you traded one problem for a different one. What also matters is the environment that made daily drinking feel like the logical move, the kind of schedule where you are in a different city every night, and the only constants are the stage and the after party. Bottle service everywhere you go. People handing you drinks because they want to be seen drinking with you. A team of people whose income depends on you being present and performing, which means nobody is incentivized to be the one who tells you to slow down. Meek was navigating all of that fresh off a prison bid, trying to stay off lean, and landed on daily drinking as the solution. He was not the first artist to make that trade, and he will not be the last. The rap industry creates a perfect incubator for alcohol dependency because the access is total, and the social pressure to participate runs in every direction. Nobody hands you a glass of water at a hip-hop after party and calls it a celebration. And when the people around you have a financial stake in you showing up and performing at full capacity, nobody is going to be the one who pulls the bottle away either. Rick Ross. Rosé has been the brand ambassador for Luc Belaire for over a decade. He has driven more earned media value for that brand than almost any other celebrity endorsement deal in alcohol history. Tens of millions of dollars worth of exposure driven entirely by his genuine and visible enthusiasm for the product. In a 2026 Rolling Stone interview tied to the launch of Luc Belaire's new non-alcoholic rosé, Ross was asked whether his lifestyle was going more sober alongside the NA product.
Because I sip and smoke every day, and it's not a native situation.
He sips wine while working out. He is not promoting the product in that moment. He is describing his actual behavior. A man who is consuming alcohol as a standard part of his workout routine is not casually enjoying a drink, and Ross does not have a clean health history to fall back on here. He suffered seizures in 2011 and 2012, incidents linked to dehydration and physical stress. His weight has fluctuated dramatically over the years in ways medical professionals consistently associate with high-level substance use. Here's the part worth sitting with. The specific financial dynamic here is genuinely unusual. Ross is being paid to drink. He has built a multi-million-dollar partnership around a product he openly admits he consumes personally and habitually. The brand's entire marketing strategy with him is that the enthusiasm is real, which means Sovereign Brands has a financial incentive for Rick Ross to keep drinking, and Ross has a financial incentive to frame that drinking as a lifestyle choice. That setup makes it nearly impossible for anyone in his circle to raise a real concern without threatening the revenue. Most brand ambassadors have to at least perform some level of aspiration. Ross has made authentic daily consumption the selling point, which means the deal only works if he keeps drinking, and he has been very clear that he intends to. French Montana. French Montana is the closest thing on this list to a warning that actually arrived publicly, because in 2019, the bill came due in a way that left no room for spin. In October 2019, French collapsed at his Calabasas home and was rushed to the hospital. He spent 7 days in the ICU and another week in a private room recovering. In a later XXL interview, he revealed exactly what happened: drinking excessively and taking too many prescription pills, Adderall and Percocet, for too long.
When I went to the hospital, yeah, there was like, if you drink, you die. If you keep drinking, you're gonna die. So I was like, there it goes. French vanilla Ciroc, yo, pop.
His own description of how it got there is one of the clearest accounts of addiction anyone in this industry has ever put on record.
Percocet started off as a pain relief, and then it ends up being a hobby, and then it ends up being an addiction. I feel like 90% of musicians on that.
And then he added something that cuts even deeper.
People were seeing that I was out of control, not me. It's almost like, working out. You don't see you getting big because you see yourself every day.
That last part is the part that matters. He could not see it himself until he was in an ICU bed with doctors telling him another drink could stop his heart. He says he got sober after that. He stepped back, went quiet on social media, and called it the hardest thing he had ever done. There is no publicly confirmed evidence that he relapsed, but here's the real concern. French Montana's entire public brand is built around the party lifestyle. His circle, his music, his events. All of it exists in the same environment that put him in the ICU in the first place. The doctors who treated him said a single drink could kill him. That is not a light warning. That is a come to God conversation in a hospital bed. And the fact that he came out of that, went back to the same social world, kept working with the same people, and kept showing up at the same kinds of events without any visible accountability structure is the part that keeps the concern alive. Mac and Cheese 5 dropped in February 2024, and French sounded like his most active and social self again. Back in the rooms, back with the same crowd, back on the same circuit that put him in the ICU in the first place. Most people who survive a near-death experience tied to substance abuse need a genuine change of environment to stay clean. Returning to the exact same world and calling it willpower is a high-wire act. Whether he is still clean in those rooms is a question only the people closest to him actually know the answer to. The rest of us are just reading the room. Future. Future's case is the most revealing on this list because he told you the whole story himself, and what he said exposed something much darker than just a substance problem. For years, Future built his entire commercial identity around lean, dirty Sprite, and DS2. The cup was part of the aesthetic, the music, the brand. He named an entire album era after the drink. His fan base understood his sound as inseparable from that lifestyle, and that understanding was not accidental. He cultivated it deliberately because it worked commercially. Then at some point, he quietly stopped, not to go public with it, not to inspire anyone, because his body made him, and then he hid it for months. He did not tell his team, did not tell fans, did not post about it. He just stopped and said nothing. When the news eventually came out, he explained why.
I didn't want to tip because I felt like, damn, they're gonna be like, oh, his music changed because he ain't drinking lean no more. Oh, I can hear it when he changing. It's just like, and people are like, damn, why you don't even say it? It's like, but it just be hard when your fans so used to you a certain kind of way, is that certain persona, you be afraid to change. You be like, you're afraid if they not gonna even accept me no more.
A man who was afraid to get sober publicly because he thought it would hurt. His streaming numbers had completely fused his identity with his substance use. The music was the addiction, and the addiction was the music, and neither could exist without the other in his mind. Future has stayed quiet about his current relationship with substances ever since. He has not made sobriety part of his brand the way some artists do. His music has shifted in tone and production style, moving away from the sound that made DS2 and Purple Rain landmark records. Whether that reflects genuine change or just a more private version of the same cycle, the public does not have a clear answer. What the evidence does tell you is that Future spent years building an addiction into a commercial identity, then spent months hiding his own recovery to protect that identity, then continued making music in an industry that rewarded him for the original version of himself. Labels, streaming algorithms, fan expectations, all of it was calibrated around the version of him that was using. That is not an environment that naturally supports lasting change. The financial incentives all point in the wrong direction, and the fact that he was willing to hide his sobriety for months to protect his commercial persona tells you exactly how much you should trust any future public statement he makes about where he actually is with all of it. Danny Brown. Now, Danny is not making this list for promoting alcoholism, all the opposite. He's one of the few that was using heavy and then rebuilt, avoiding the worst outcomes possible. Danny Brown built a significant part of his artistry around substance content for years. He called himself the Adderall Admiral, which tells you everything you need to know about how integrated the use was with the creative identity. On his biggest songs, he was literally naming himself after the drugs. Drugs and alcohol ran through his music and interviews like a thread. Earlier in his career, it read as personality. Then in 2023 and 2024, he started talking on his podcast about what that reality actually looked like from the inside. The drinking problem that had been developing, the decision to go to rehab, getting to 90 days sober, and posting about it publicly. He told people it is never too late to change, that if he could do it, anyone can.
What made you want to get sober?
You just having fun with it, but then you find yourself doing blow, getting drunk, drinking a fifth a day by yourself, and you're like, why am I really doing this?
Real words from someone who had been sitting in the middle of it for a long time. Brown is not about whether his problem was hidden. It is about why the culture's reaction to a rapper openly describing alcoholism and going to rehab is this quiet. He posted a 90-day sobriety milestone, and it got a fraction of the coverage that any of his beef-adjacent tweets ever generated. When a rapper just quietly goes to rehab and comes back talking about recovery, the culture does not know what to do with it. It doesn't give quite the same emotion as what some seizure or death would to a viewer. So the audience partially doesn't care about sobriety. It's just a person who had a problem and ask for help, that story does not generate the same engagement. And the gap between what gets clicked and what actually matters is exactly where the industry buries these cases. Brown doing the work to get 90 days sober and telling people about it publicly is more meaningful than anything else on this list in terms of actual impact on a real person's life. The culture's silence on it is not an accident. It is a symptom of a genre that built its identity around substances and has no narrative framework for when someone just quietly gets better. Bow Wow is a case that got covered once when Mac Miller died, then got quietly filed away and never revisited. And it deserves a proper look because what he described about his own addiction is more specific and more alarming than most people who saw the headlines at the time actually remember. When Mac Miller passed in September 2018 from an accidental overdose, it shook the industry in a way that made a few artists reckon publicly with their own use. Bow Wow was one of them. He came out and talked about his lean addiction openly, describing how bad it had gotten and how Mac's death was the thing that finally made him look at himself honestly.
I was on lean. I was sipping so much syrup, bro. And I said this too, like right after Mac Miller had died. I was like, what, nigga? Wait, what? What do you mean he ain't do? Like, I'm wrong. Come on, get up, we out. All that, man, I'm telling you, I put that down back then.
The lean problem had been visible for a while before that. Bow Wow had started drinking it years earlier, the way most artists in his circles did, slowly, socially, and then not so socially. By the time he went public about it, he was describing the kind of dependency where the drink is part of the daily routine, whether or not there is a party happening, whether or not there is a reason. What makes his case interesting from a detective standpoint is the timeline. He went public with the addiction, credited Mac's death as the wake-up call, and pledged to get clean. But the years that followed were not the clean, straightforward recovery narrative that statement implied. His public behavior stayed erratic. His social media kept generating the kind of content that raises questions, and the conversation about whether he actually followed through on getting help never really got the scrutiny it deserved because the culture had already moved on to the next thing. He posted about being drug-free. That should have been the beginning of accountability, not the end of the conversation. But in hip-hop, the press release of sobriety tends to close the story rather than open it. Nobody keeps checking back in. And for Bow Wow, a guy who has been in the public eye since he was literally a child, whose entire adult life has played out in front of cameras and social media audiences, the lack of any real follow-through from the culture around his sobriety claim is concerning. And what has been happening behind that announcement is something the culture has never really demanded an answer to. That silence is his own kind of answer. Hip-hop made alcohol the most acceptable addiction in the game, gave it deals, sponsorships, and a place in almost every hit record of the last 20 years. And that is exactly how it hides in plain sight. The cup in the video is just a prop until it is not. The after party is just business until the body starts shutting down. And the people closest to these artists have every financial reason to look the other way until it is too late. Every case on this list has one thing in common. Somebody knew, and nobody said anything. And if you enjoyed this one, you will definitely want to check out these videos on your screen next. Have a good one.